Hello and welcome to Chapter 8 in Computers and Healthcare. We're going to be talking about clinical information systems starting in the textbook on page 125. We're going to slide through these learning objectives and get to our clinical information system intro. So a clinical information system collects and stores medical, nursing, clinical ancillary areas such as radiology and lab, and therapy department information related to patient care. Data contained within the various information systems are patient identifiable and are therefore protected by HIPAA. The clinical data stored in the CIS are used to diagnose a patient's condition, make treatment decisions, monitor the current condition, and manage overall care. And we're going to talk about document management systems, radiology information systems, the laboratory information system, nursing information system, pharmacy information system, interdisciplinary charting systems, emergency department systems, anesthesia information systems, patient monitoring systems, telehealth, and smart cards. So this first lecture is going to cover the document management system because it's by far got the most content in this chapter. So we're going to start over on page 127. A document management system, or a DMS, is an electronic method of capturing and managing documents. The DMS is used primarily by health information management departments and other departments to handle documents regarding patient care. These documents can be scanned or obtained electronically from other information systems. One of the advantages to the DMS is the use of workflow. The workflow processes identified within the DMS include health record completion, release of information, and routing documents for review. The DMS can be a standalone information system or a component of the EHR. A DMS can also be used in other areas of healthcare facility besides the HIM department, such as human resources, patient financial services, purchasing, registration, and the business office. Document capture is much more than scanning paper images into the DMS. Voice, video, electronic transactions, and other forms of technology may be used to capture data. One example is OCR, or optical character recognition. OCR is defined as a method of encoding text from analog paper into bitmapped images and translating the images into a form that is computer readable. With OCR, a text can be scanned and the content can be edited. Document indexing, barcoding, and character and form recognition are ways to link documents to a particular patient, thus allowing for retrieval. An index is an organized list of specific data that serves to guide, indicate, or otherwise facilitate reference to the data. These indexing tools allow the user to locate and retrieve a specific patient's health record, a specific encounter, and even a specific document through the use of indexing by entering search criteria into one or more of the index fields. The user is then able to view the desired document as well as print, fax, or use another method of transmission. The purpose of the DMS is not to eliminate paper, but rather to manage documents. To manage these documents, the healthcare facility needs to use the DMS for more than document imaging. So the DMS is not the same as an EHR. The EHR is an electronic record of health-related information on an individual that conforms to nationally recognized interoperability standards and that can be created, managed, and consulted by authorized clinicians and staff across more than one healthcare organization. Based on this definition, document imaging does not qualify as an EHR because the healthcare providers do not create the data within the DMS. If employees' expectations are not managed and they believe that a DMS is an EHR, they are often disappointed in the information system when it's implemented. Employees will soon recognize that the DMS will not be able to perform the functionality of an EHR. For example, unless OCR has been used, the DMS will not be able to perform searches on the content of the health records because the images are pictures of the paper documents. The DMS will also not assist in clinical decision support. Alright, so dropping down, we're going to move over to page 128. So a DMS is made of many components, including a scanner, magnetic storage, and file server. All of the components work together to scan, store, and retrieve health records documents. So let's talk about scanners first. Scanner is the hardware that is used to transform the paper document into a digital image. Scanners are rated based on the number of pages per minute, or ppm, that the scanner can process. High-powered scanners used to accomplish high-volume scanning, usually found in HIM departments, resemble a copier with an automatic document feeder. The scanner chosen should be fast enough to accommodate the volume of scanning that needs to be accomplished. Generally, the larger the healthcare facility, the faster the scanner needed. The scanner should be able to adjust the density and contrast of the scanning automatically based on the type of form being scanned. Dropping down into that paragraph. The scanner is able to identify the type of form and make needed adjustments because of barcodes on either the form or the target sheets. Target sheets are pages that contain only a barcode that tells the scanner and ultimately the computer the content of the pages that follow. The barcode may contain the form name, the patient name, or some other piece of information. If the scanner cannot scan both sides of a two-sided document, the operator must scan the other side manually. Alright, so let's talk about scanning workstations. This is another component of your document imaging system. So the scanning workstation itself is the desktop computer that controls the scanner. Once a document is scanned, the workstation compresses the file created by the scanner in order to save space. Another step performed by the scanning workstation is to give each document scanned an individual file name. The name is used to store the image and is ultimately used when the file is retrieved. Then we have our abstracting and quality control workstation. The abstracting and quality control workstation is also a personal computer. Rather than scanning, this workstation is used for indexing and quality control. The healthcare facility determines the data elements to be indexed based on its needs. During the quality control process, the clerk views every image to check for the quality of the image and verifies that indexing is accurate and patient demographics are correct. Then we have file servers. This is a large PC or other computer that is extremely powerful and has a large amount of memory and magnetic hard drive. When the user performs an inquiry on a PC to retrieve a patient's health record, the file server receives the request for the document images, retrieves the document images, and sends the document images back to the requester. When documents are scanned into the computer, the files created are stored on the file's magnetic hard drive. And lastly, we have our retrieval workstation. This is the workstation used by the physician, HIM staff, or other users to retrieve patient information and view document images. If the workstation is used to access few health records, a standard size monitor will work. With a standard size monitor, usually 22 to 24 inches, measured diagonally across the viewable screen, the entire image will not fit on the screen. The user will have to scroll to see the entire page. If the workstation is used heavily to view document images, it's easier to the user's eyes and for the display of the image to have an oversized monitor. And it's important to evaluate what size monitor is needed because there's a significant cost difference between the two. Alright, so let's move on to printers on page 129. The healthcare facility will need to determine who has the rights to print reports from the document management system. The size of the printer will be based on the volume of printing performed by that area. For example, in the typical HIM department, a high-quality, high-speed laser printer is needed in order to print large volumes of information. The print server controls the location where documents are printed and controls the work queue or order in which a document prints. The fastest way to print is to use a print file server to control and facilitate the printing process. There must be an electronic or computerized print tracking log similar to an audit log that indicates who requested or submitted the print order, where the printing occurred, so which printer was used in what area of the facility, the date and time of printing, and what forms or reports were printed, and any other pertinent information that the healthcare facility deems appropriate. Alright, another component of our document management system is annotation. One of the functions of the DMS is the ability to annotate the images. Annotation is the ability to add to the image in some way. Because the image may be a legal document, the image itself cannot be altered. However, an overlay to the document will show the annotation. These annotations are useful to call attention to some data on the form and to enhance viewing. There are several ways to annotate the document. First, we have the note. The note tool will allow the physician or other user to add a note to the image. This may be useful if additional data may have become available and the physician wants to call it to the reader's attention. Or highlighting. The highlighting tool emphasizes important sections of text, much like a highlighter pen on paper or your textbooks. The purpose is to call the reader's attention to specific test results or other documentation. Then we have drawing. The drawing tool can be used to draw circles, arrows, or other markings. This is another way to bring the reader's attention to a specific data, or in the case of a radiology image, the anomaly. Then we have zoom and reduction. The zoom and reduction tool enlarges or reduces the size of the images to enhance viewing. This is helpful if the writing is small or there is a lot of writing on the page that is difficult to read. It's very helpful in the interpretation of the radiology reports because the radiologist can enlarge portions of the image to better see any anomalies. And last, rotate. The rotate tool allows the user to flip an image. This is useful if a document has been scanned upside down or sideways. Alright, so let's talk about advantages and disadvantages to document management systems. Some healthcare facilities choose to focus on the advantages and implement the DMS in their progression towards the EHR. Others choose to skip this step and go directly to the EHR. Some advantages are space savings, productivity gains, and immediate access to patient information. Disadvantages include lack of manipulation, reporting capabilities, and fear of change to the work process. So let's talk about space savings. Space savings is a definite advantage of the DMS because paper health records take up a lot of space. Space in a healthcare facility is a valuable commodity, and healthcare facilities are always looking for ways to improve space utilization. Retrieval of number of large records is next. And so the HIM department is constantly pulling large numbers of health records for audits, research, and other purposes. HIM staff must pull the health records for review and later refile them once the review is complete. This process takes up a lot of time and space because the health records have to be stored during the review process, and space has to be allocated for the reviewers to work. So if everything's in a computer system, then there's no charts to pull, there's no, space constraints on where they're going to be stored, where they're going to be reviewed. So that is an advantage of having a document management system. All right, our last two, which this one wasn't necessarily listed, but you do have productivity gains because, again, you're not moving paper records from one area to another. It eliminates the health record retrieval and assembly and many other routine paper-based traditional health record functions. So you are going to gain some productivity when you move to a DMS. And last, online availability of information. When it comes to emergency patient care, minutes count. The availability of the patient's past medical history can be the difference between life and death. For example, if the patient has an allergy and the physician does not know, an inappropriate medication could be prescribed to the patient, thus resulting in harm to the patient and possibly death. Alright, so let's talk about system security control. With access controls, audit trails, and other security measures, the security of the health record is improved over that of a traditional paper health record. So this is still considered an advantage. With paper health record, there's only one point of access, but there's no way to know who viewed the health record and what they looked at. And we've talked about this in the past, is there's no metadata with your paper record. I could pick that paper record up tomorrow, read all about this patient, but 5 years from now, no one knows I read that. But if it was in a document management system, the metadata that's stored in that system tells exactly what documents I looked at, what day of the week, what time, whether I printed it or just viewed it. So the advantage is having that metadata available. All right, so let's talk about database retrieval. DMS allows for searches based on index data. For example, a search could retrieve all patients who were discharged from the facility on December 1st, or all of Dr. Smith's patients, or John Brown's health record. This function is great for research and saves time from having to identify patients and then retrieve their data individually. Alright, so lack of manipulation or reporting. So we're getting into our disadvantages. Because of the images are pictures of the health record documents and not entries into the EHR, the user is unable to manipulate the data to show trends or other views. Likewise, the user cannot generate reports related to the images rather than enter data. And then fear of change. People are inherently afraid of change. Research on DMS implementations has shown that at least initially the number of employees needed increases because the HIM department is still managing the paper health record in addition to the EHR. Because of this, management must let the employees know the status of their positions. Usually, staff members will maintain their current jobs, but some jobs may change or even be eliminated. Instead of filing reports in the health record, they may be scanning documents. Keeping employees informed of changes will help keep their fear manageable and may prevent the department from losing good employees. Alright, so let's talk about the implementation of a DMS. Healthcare facilities must manage the existing paper records when a DMS is implemented. The healthcare facility has to decide if these existing records will be scanned into the information system, and if so, how many. Healthcare facilities' decisions on this matter vary widely. Some scan only health records with a discharge date on or after the DMS implementation date. Other healthcare facilities choose to backscan some or all existing health records to provide users electronic access to the old records. Backscanning is the process of scanning past health records into the DMS so there's an existing database of patient information, making the DMS valuable to the user from the first day of implementation. The healthcare facility should choose how far back to go with the scanning, such as 6 months or 2 years. Healthcare facilities that choose to backscan documents typically participate in medical research and have high readmission rates to the healthcare facility. An example of this research could be a pediatric longitudinal study that looks at a patient care or treatment protocols over a number of years or decades, such as in the case of babies born with certain birth defects. Other healthcare facilities choose to backscan on a patient-by-patient basis upon future admittance. The decision should be based on the needs of the healthcare facility, cost, filing space, and other resources. Record scanning can be performed by the healthcare facility, HIM, or other designated staff, or it can be outsourced to a vendor. If the facility decides to scan the health records themselves, additional staff would be needed to manage the current workload and to add backscanning to their task. Many facilities overcome this need by hiring temporary employees to cover the difference in workload. Healthcare facilities that choose vendors to scan because of their high productivity and experienced staff enable the scanning to be completed more quickly. The vendor usually charges by the number of images scanned and the actual task performed. These tasks may include preparation of the health record for scanning, indexing, and quality control. Alright, so let's talk about justification of cost. So healthcare facilities justify the cost of DMS with the savings that occur from decreasing the operating cost of the HIM department and the healthcare facility as a whole. The savings come from reductions in clerical staff, improvement in accounts receivable as health records are no longer misplaced and are therefore able to be coded, and increased revenue due to decreased expenses. Although staffing may increase at first while both the existing paper health record and the DMS are managed, over time staffing can be reduced below original levels. Alright, so let's talk about forms. Forms management is a key implementation issue that must be addressed. At least 6 months prior to implementation of the DMS, forms should be evaluated and redesigned to facilitate the scanning process. The weight of the paper used should be appropriate for use in the scanner. Paper that is too heavy or too light may jam the automatic feeder. White paper is recommended for all forms because the color of the document is scanned along with the content form. This significantly increases the size of the computer file and the quality of the printed document. The form should be standardized to 8.5 by 11-inch dimensions when possible. The redesign should include the addition of barcodes to each form. The barcode makes indexing more efficient because the barcode can enter metadata automatically. The recommended barcode symbiology or format is code 39, also known as code 3 of 9. These barcodes should be placed on the form in a standardized location. Then we have staffing changes. With the transition of employees from filing paper to scanning, indexing, and quality control, new job titles and job descriptions will be required, and staffing needs may be reduced. For example, the file clerk role could be replaced by a clerk who performs both scanning and quality control for the scanning process. These tasks would require additional technology skills which may elevate the clerk's pay grade. However, since the workload is electronic, fewer pages would need to be filed within the paper health record, reducing the time and thus the personnel required to complete the task. Test results and other documents would be entered into the EHR automatically without the need of human assistance. Changes in job titles and job descriptions must be in place at the time of the DMS implementation and would be decided after discussions with administration and Human Resources Department. The HIM department and other affected staff must train on the DMS prior to implementation to prevent backlogs from occurring, which would impact user satisfaction. Dropping down to process redesign. The implementation of a DMS will have a tremendous impact on the workflow of an HIM department. As a result, the HIM department will have to re-engineer workflows to adapt to an electronic environment and review and update policies and procedures among many tasks to aid in the transition. The HIM department will no longer have to assemble a health record. They will prepare the health record for scanning instead. The way the traditional discharge processing, such as coding and chart analysis, is done will also drastically change. For instance, analysis is done online. Physician completion of records can be completed from any location, and electronic signatures are used. And I can attest to all of this. This was my job when I started at North Mississippi Medical Center, was to transition from a paper environment into the document management environment. And so when we got started, and we wanted to go full blast with our document imaging, we had to make the decision of when to scan the health record. And so when we first were getting started, we wanted to kind of phase in the physician approach. So we started with scanning upon completion. And so we picked a date and time, and it was September 1st of 2006. And we started scanning all of our inpatient discharges when they were complete. And that's the second section we're going to cover. But when we sat down and we got everything in place for our physicians, we chose the date of February 1st of 2007 to begin scanning immediately following discharge. So we had all our processes in place for internal customers, our coding staff, our analysis staff, and then our physicians, so that they knew that they no longer were coming into the office to complete a paper chart, but they could log in from their office, they could log in from the women's hospital, they could log in from home to complete their medical records in the system. So let's talk about these two different methods, immediately after discharge and upon completion. So many healthcare facilities scan the health record immediately following the patient's discharge from the hospital. There are a number of advantages to scanning the health record at this point. This timing allows coding and analysis to be performed remotely if the healthcare facility so chooses. It also allows immediate access to the health record for patient care, coding, analysis, and other healthcare operations. In the traditional paper environment, the discharge processing of the health record is a linear process. One step has to be completed before the next because only one employee can access the record at one time. So we've talked about this before as well. Only one set of hands can have that paper record. So if the analysis team is looking through that record to see what physician still needs to complete information in the chart, coding can't have it, and the physician can't have it. And if that patient came back into the ER, then we're going to have to take it to the ER so they can have the information. So it's a linear process. It's one person at a time dealing with the record. So a DMS analysis can check that chart for deficiencies while coding is actually coding the chart, and a physician could be signing on their documentation as soon as we assign it to them. With DMS and workflow technology, coders, analysts, and others must no longer wait for other steps in the discharge process to be complete before accessing the health record because imaging allows concurrent access. That means they can all look at it at the same time. This speeds up the discharge processing function. Many patients are readmitted to the healthcare facility immediately after discharge, so having the recent discharge health records scanned and available to the emergency department or other patient care areas improves the quality of care provided. There are also disadvantages of scanning immediately after discharge. Not only do staff members have to be trained to use the DMS as part of their discharging process, but physicians must also be trained on how to complete health records online. In addition to retrieval of images, the physician would need to know how to use the annotation tools discussed earlier in this chapter and how to sign the documents electronically. The physician would also need to know how to complete forms electronically and to dictate discharge summaries and other documents. And I can attest to this as well. When we made that decision to move to scanning at discharge in February of 2007, we literally had to have 24-hour coverage in the HIM department so that when physicians came in, we were there to support them because change, again, people do not like change, and physicians sure don't like change. So, when they came in and they got their paper records, they followed their colored sticky note and they knew exactly where to sign, and they signed by hand, and then they stuck that chart up to be checked again. Well, now you're telling them, well, you got to log into another computer system, you got to have another password and a PIN number for a physician every time they log in, and then I've got to learn how to use this system too. So it was a difficult change, but now I think they would never, ever even possibly imagine going back to doing it the old way. So definitely disadvantages of having to get a medical staff on board with your DMS. All right, so let's talk about scanning upon completion. Some healthcare facilities choose to scan the health record after the completion of the health record discharge processing. This method does not impact physician chart completion, and it does not allow coding and analysis to be performed remotely. Those who need access to the health record in the immediate discharge period still must wait for it to be processed in the traditional linear method. That is, the process in which the health record goes from the first step in the discharge process, usually putting all the pages in the correct sequence, to each subsequent step, and is completed when the final deficiency analysis is complete. The health record is scanned once all final paperwork, such as lab results, is received, and all forms signed by the appropriate medical nursing personnel and transcribed reports are incorporated. There are expenses related to the management of the paper record during the discharge process, such as the cost of folders and the space for record completion. So when you've got 500 incomplete charts that are waiting for a physician to come manually sign those, you've got to have a pretty good amount of space somewhere so that you can keep those paper records kind of sorted, so you know that this stack belongs to this physician and this stack belongs to that physician. So there is space issues there. All right, so let's talk about retrieval of images as part of our implementation. To retrieve and view document images stored in the DMS, one must be an authorized user with the proper permissions. A user enters one or more of the index fields, such as a patient's health record number, to retrieve the appropriate health record and its associated document images for review. And then the future of document management system. It is unlikely that imaging itself will be outdated anytime soon because there continue to be paper documents brought by the patient or from an outside source that will need to be scanned into the appropriate health record in the EHR. All right, so we're going to cut lecture here, and we're going to pick up all of those other systems in our second lecture for this chapter. So happy reading and happy studying.